If they have ever been, comic book superheroes haven't been just for kids for a while. They've even managed to tell mature stories like Iron Man's Demon in the Bottle. When they aren't telling a more mature story, from time to time the creators like to slide in a sly joke or reference that might go over the heads of younger fans, just so everyone walks out with something special. Here are some of the more adult moments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Peter Quill's time as an Earthling was cut pretty short, but he made sure to get the most out of it. He absorbed as much of popular Earth culture as he could before Yondu and the Ravagers picked him up. While there are some rather obvious things that a young boy in the 80s would enjoy, he apparently also had an eye for modern art. Quill name drops a specific figure in the modern art world, Jackson Pollock. Pollock became famous for his splatter paintings, where he would drip paint over large canvases. The end result is a splatter pattern all over the canvas. When Gamora tells Quill his ship is filthy, he suggests to Rocket she doesn't know the half of it, and that it would look like a Pollock painting under a blacklight. A sly reference to Star-Lord's recreational activities. You know what a blacklight shows, right? Even Rocket thinks that's gross. Avengers Age of Ultron brought a lot of changes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Clint Barton, the Avengers bow and arrow loving Hawkeye, lived on a farm with a family. Iron Man unretired his drones after blowing them up in Iron Man 3, and a certain science bro, Bruce Banner, developed a little bit of a romance with Natasha Romanoff, otherwise known as the Black Widow. During the final battle over a flying Sokovia, Iron Man was already being his quippy self. When Rhodey worried if War Machine could hold its own, Tony offered to hold Rhodey's own if they made it through. When inquiring about Black Widow and Hulk's whereabouts, he says they better not be playing hide the zucchini. It's like an eggplant, but green. You get it. During Iron Man 2, Tony's industrial rival Justin Hammer of Hammer Industries tries to big-time Stark at a party, introducing him to a Vanity Fair reporter that's doing a spread on Justin Hammer. Strictly speaking, a spread in a magazine is a 2-page article where both pages are part of a whole, but Pepper Potts points out that the beautiful reporter also did a big spread on Tony. Tony adds that she did an article as well. There is more than one way to do a spread. When the original Ant-Man, Hank Pym, enlisted Scott Lang to get his Ant-Man suit back from his own company, Marvel's variable-size hero was introduced to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As impressive as getting small is, it's got nothing on getting big. When facing a divided Avengers in a German airport, Scott decided to field test the other side of the Ant-Man suit's size-changing abilities, growing pretty big. In Ant-Man and the Wasp, Scott got to meet Pym's former partner, Bill Foster, who had been working on the Go Big part of the Pym particle suits. Lang asks how big Hank's old partner got, and he answers with 21 feet, which is impressive. It is, however, less than a third of Lang's 65 feet, so he's got him beat. But that mutual admiration ends when Hope Van Dyne asks if they're done comparing sizes. According to Freud, we're never done. Once upon a time, Thor was just the boisterous and brash son of the All-Father Odin. Of course, that boisterous nature and brashness would be a problem if Thor was ever to take the throne and rule Asgard in Odin's stead. So, after starting a fight with the Frost Giants, Odin enchanted Thor's favorite toy Mjolnir and said he couldn't have it back until he became worthy. In fact, anyone who's worthy can lift Thor's hammer and gain its powers. In Age of Ultron, Clint Barton doubts the sincerity of the enchantment and tests his worth against the enchantment, giving him some backhanded encouragement. Tony Stark says that Barton has had a bad week. If he can't get it up, no one would hold it against him. At least he didn't offer him a little blue pill. After Clint had his unsuccessful go at the party, the other Avengers take their turns testing their worth with the mighty hammer. Well, except Natasha, who knows better than to ask that question. It plays as a lighthearted moment of bonding for the team, but also manages to set up a moment later in the movie where they're trying to determine if they can trust Tony and Bruce's second attempt at an android Vision. Vision, of course, was able to wield Mjolnir just fine. When Tony goes for his shot, he confirms that he'll rule Asgard if he's able to. Tony's first order of business as a rule of Asgard is the ancient practice of prima nocta, or first night, which granted royalty the first night with a subject's new bride. Seems excessive considering Tony's track record with ladies without it. It's not like he really needs to put rules into place. That's just weird. When it comes to flirtation, Peter Quill's attempts with Gamora have been anything but smooth. Peter has been awkward and fumbling trying to win over the stoic Gamora, but that might be because, for once, Gamora actually means something to Quill. If Quill's characterization of his ship under Blacklight is any indication, with those he's not madly in love with, Quill is a little more on the smooth side. Like when he meets Aisha of the Sovereign. The Guardians had just solved the Sovereign's battery-eating monster problem, and the team was showing up for their reward. The Sovereign genetically designed each member of their society and hatch them in birthing pods. Quill tells her that he likes to make people the old-fashioned way. It's so intriguing, Aisha actually suggests that maybe he could show her, for scientific purposes, of course. Something Quill rejects once he remembers Gamora, you know, the one he actually cares about. When Peter Parker made his way to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the big screen got its youngest Parker yet. Tom Holland's Peter Parker is firmly in his teens. A teenager with superpowers tends to be a representation of other changes one's body goes through during those years, and the journey of exploration that goes with it. Which is why when Parker's buddy Ned says he'd fire the web shooters from the highest building just to see how far it goes. It's not only a nod to a scene in Raimi's Spider-Man, but also a nod to, other changes. Just ask Peter Quill, don't ask us. You'd be forgiven if you were to think that early on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Thor had a bit of a Shakespearean air to him. In finding unconventional directors to create a unique stamp for their movies, the fledgling Marvel Studios had drafted Kenneth Branagh, famous for his Shakespeare adaptations to bring the God of Thunder to the big screen. Branagh wasn't the only one to bring old-world flair to Earth's mightiest heroes. The completely conventional and wise choice to bring writer-director Joss Whedon on as the one to bring the heroes together meant that Whedon's sly wit and talent for language came with him. In a verbal showdown between Thor's brother Loki and Black Widow, a frustrated Loki calls her a mewling quim, which is a classy way to make a dirty joke. We can't tell you what that means here, but just make sure you don't Google it at work. It's not just the scatological reference here or there that might go over the younger viewers' heads. They can also take the form of pop culture references that younger viewers might not be aware of. Of course, as Peter Parker is able to demonstrate, even if you're young, you can be an encyclopedia of pop culture from before your time. Just don't call Star Wars really, really old, Peter. It's just mean. But there are viewers younger than Peter that might not have gotten all the way through Dad's DVD collection and won't get some of the passing references. Like if they haven't seen the Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze extreme sports crime movie about surfing bank robbers. You might not know why Stark calls Thor Point Break when they first meet in Avengers or makes that his Quinjet password. Seriously, surfing bank robbers. The 90s were just great. Ask Carol Danvers. She can tell ya. Peter Quill's relationship with the Nova Corps and the Xandarians has been a little shaky. He had gotten into a brawl with his future teammates, which landed him in prison, but they ended up escaping it after getting over their differences and finding out that they had a common goal. When things continue to go bad for the newly formed Guardians of the Galaxy, they have to return to Xandar to prevent Ronan the Accuser of using the Power Stone to destroy Xandar. In order to do that, he has to convince the Xandarians that he's on their side. Considering how they left, it's reasonable to understand why they wouldn't think so. Quill does this in classic Quill fashion, by sending them a letter outlining exactly what part of the anatomy he's like. One stinks, but the other is intrusive. Tony Stark was ill-suited to start life as a superhero. Not only had his company been selling weapons, building its fortune on war and destruction, but Stark had spent most of his life thinking about himself and only himself. The genius billionaire playboy philanthropist really leaned heavily on that playboy part. Unlike other billionaire heroes, the carefree rich bad boy was no apt for Tony Stark. Left to deal with the aftermath of this kind of behavior was Tony's long-suffering assistant, Pepper Potts. Potts' job got that much more complicated when Stark decided to get into the superhero game by making the Mark II Iron Man suit, which Potts discovered when she ran into Tony sorting out the finer points of the fitting system. While it's an awkward position that she finds him in, he points out that this isn't the most awkward one she's seen. We have no doubt that's true. It was a big ol' spread after all. In 1981, buddy Steven Spielberg and George Lucas released their tribute to the action serials of days gone by, and introduced the world to Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones with the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. Set in World War II, Captain America, the first Avenger, opens with Johann Schmidt, the nefarious Red Skull busting up a Norwegian church in search of the Tesseract. Once the actual red-headed super soldier gets his hand on the glowing cube, which would turn out to be the start of the Infinity Saga, Schmidt quips about the Führer hunting around in the desert for trinkets. That is a nod to Raiders, which follows a team of Nazi scientists looking for the Ark of the Covenant. For Peter Quill, the pop culture clock stopped in the 80s when the Ravagers grabbed him. If you weren't around in the 80s, you might not catch all of his references. If you aren't actually from Earth, you almost certainly aren't going to get Quill's references. That's exactly the situation Peter Quill finds himself in with the rest of his crew, none of which are from Earth. Peter Quill makes a pitch for he and Gamora getting together by referencing the popular 80s sitcom Cheers. Cheers was built on one of the more famous instances of a will they won't they, where the continuing question of the show is whether the two stars will actually get together. The answer is no, by the way. Shelley Long left the series early on for a film career. None of this matters to Gamora, however, who doesn't even know what Cheers is. Captain America's second solo outing saw him teaming up with the former Russian spy as well as Sam Wilson, aka Falcon, in a movie that was part superhero movie, part spy thriller. It turns out that the old Captain America foe, Hydra, had infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. As Rogers and Romanoff peel back the onion of this conspiracy, they find themselves in an old bunker that houses an old computer bank. Even an old computer is new to Captain America, so it's up to Natasha, who sits down and asks the computer if it would like to play a game. That is a nod to probably the best hacker political thriller movie ever, WARGAMES, and the question that the computer asks. There's another member of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that has a passion for pop culture references, and that is the current Ant-Man, Scott Lang. Between his time in prison and house arrest, he's had a lot of time to catch up. Scott and his friends that make up ex-con security consultants never set out to be heroes, and lack the dedicated focus of a Captain America, or the weight of responsibility of even a Spider-Man. But they want to do the right thing, and have the power to do it. That doesn't mean they can't get a little distracted, as friends often do. When Lang encounters the safe he was sent to break into, he remarks that it's the same steel that the Titanic was made of. The crew goes from referencing the actual disaster to the movie about it, noting that the iceberg killed DiCaprio, but not the old lady. She was able to throw the jewel in the sea. Even before Peter Parker got the ability to do whatever a spider can, he was an exceptional kid. After all, once he can climb walls and dodge danger, he immediately decides to expand on the theme. From the chemicals available to a high school student, he's able to create web-making fluid and a device to shoot them out. The MCU is full of geniuses. While some of the geniuses are good with the ladies, Parker is not. In that way, he's the average teen. In his first Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, he has to face his inability to dance and put on a tie after he successfully gets a date with Liz Allen. Unfortunately, Peter Parker doesn't have a lot of luck in love, and her dad turns out to be the Vulture. Don't worry, Tiger, he'll eventually hit the jackpot. He rushes to Aunt May to get the information he needs, making an entrance reminiscent of Tom Cruise in Risky Business. When you leave Earth in your youth and in the 80s, there are some things that you can end up mistaken about. One might be that kids will buy that your dad is Michael Knight. Oh, if they only knew the truth. And the other might be that a Kevin Bacon movie about a town that outlawed dancing was the greatest movie ever. However, for Peter Quill, that movie is clearly a formative moment. Just like with Cheers, he tries to use the 80s teen drama with a gymnastic 80s warehouse dance montage as a metaphor for the distance between him and Gamora. The movie also inspires his dance-off gambit against Ronan. Even with all that, he isn't able to convince fellow pop culture fan Peter Parker that Footloose was the best movie ever. Among Ego's many powers is the ability to manifest himself as a regular life form to interact with life on other not-living planets. What he found disappointed him, so he set about trying to make another Celestial, the old-fashioned way, which is how he met Quill's mom. Growing up not knowing anything about his dad, he chose the next coolest thing he could find on TV. For the early 80s, that was Michael Knight, who drove the AI-equipped Trans Am kit. Super vehicle shows fell out of vogue after the 80s. The Guardians of the Galaxy are a bit of a loose-knit team. While when assembled, the Avengers might give Cap a hard time for calling out Tony Stark's potty mouth, the Guardians are more prone to bickering than they are anything else. To be fair, when the Avengers finally argue, it turns into a whole thing. So maybe Drax is right, they're more of a family. Except for Nebula. Okay, we'll include her too. When Rocket and Quill get into an argument mid-escape about who's the better pilot, Rocket tells Peter of the prank he plans to pull, threatening to put a turd in Quill's bed. He clarifies that it'll be Drax's turd. This amuses Drax, who states that he has famously large turds. These were just some of the moments not necessarily meant for youngins in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What are some of your favorites? What would you have put on the list? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more MCU videos. As always, thanks for watching.